Tonight, the PM promised us he'd grow the economy. Now that we are officially in recession, is that a promise broken? Meanwhile, Labour is mired in the kind of anti-Semitism row it hoped was a thing of the past. And the war in Gaza, of course, rages on. To discuss it all, we're in the historic city of Lancaster, most famous for its role in the War of the Roses and the beginnings of the Tudor dynasty. But our very modern audience here reflects, as always, the electoral picture across the nation. Welcome to Question Time. Tonight's panel from the government, Graham Stewart is a minister in the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. He's been MP for Beverley and Holderness in East Yorkshire since 2005. Labour's Lucy Powell is shadow leader of the House of Commons, a job she's been doing for 6 months now. Before that, she shadowed culture, media and sport and has been the Manchester Central MP for over a decade. Drew Hendry is one of the Scottish National Party's 43 MPs at Westminster. The Highland MP speaks for his party on the economy. Jill Kirby is a former director of the Conservative Centre for Policy Studies. She now writes mainly for The Telegraph, most recently critical of junior doctors and the pursuit of net zero. Jürgen Meyer is a leading industrialist and business advisor. For 5 years, he was CEO of Siemens UK. Now he argues for the green reindustrialisation of northern Britain and is co-founder of Vocal, a social enterprise encouraging business leaders to engage in public debate. Good evening. Welcome to our panellists here. Welcome to our audience. Very good to see you. And, of course, welcome to you at home. This programme is available in all sorts of ways on iPlayer, on BBC Sounds, and, of course, there's always a lively debate on social media as well. So let's get started with our first question, which is from Brian Mayer.
Good evening. Is Labour's biggest challenge to winning the next election the Labour Party itself?
So, well, Lucy, I'm going to come to you first. Of course, Labour's got into some difficulty with accusations of inappropriate comments, of anti-Semitism. 2 parliamentary candidates have been... Labour's withdrawn its support from them. Keir Starmer thought, one assumes, that this was a thing of the past for Labour, but this has still continued to be a problem.
Well, look, we are a world away from where we were when it comes to tackling anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. And I'm not saying it's now perfect and we've totally... eradicated it from the Labour Party, but it wasn't that long ago where we had Labour Jewish members of Parliament who needed security guards to go to our own conference. That was only a few years ago because of threats to their security. And we had leading members of the Jewish community leaving the Labour Party in droves because we couldn't deal with anti-Semitism. We had the Equality and Human Rights Commission come in and say we were in special measures because we couldn't tackle these issues within our party. And we are a world away from that now. Under Keir Starmer's leadership, he has taken very difficult and long-term and consistent decisions to eradicate that from our party, such that the Equality and Human Rights Commission took us out of special measures about a year ago this week and commended the work that we've been doing, such that people like Louise Ellman, a former Jewish Labour Member of Parliament, she rejoined the party, came to our conference this year. Luciana Berger, a good friend of mine, she's rejoined the party and she's now doing some really important work for us on mental health. So we know this was a stain on the Labour Party, and that's why we've taken the action that has been taken to really eradicate that from within our ranks.
And are you confident that you will see no more of these kinds of comments from within the Labour Party?
Well, you cannot legislate for every utterance of every Labour Party member in every circumstance. But what I do know... No,
I'm not talking about every Labour Party member, but let's say MPs, prospective candidates, senior people within Labour.
Well,
Are you confident that you won't see those kinds of comments?
I'm confident in our processes that mean that people who are found have said things that are anti-Semitic or have said things that are unacceptable and wrong will be dealt with and will be dealt with swiftly. And we do have very...
no, then? You can't say that you're confident.
Well, we are confident, and we are confident
you won't hear more of these kinds of comments?
Well, as I say, you cannot legislate for every utterance that every person makes in every circumstance. But what I can be confident about is that our candidates are very vetted, very highly vetted, and some, odd thing, obviously, as in this case, gets through the net, but we take it incredibly seriously. Keir Starmer has made it one of his key priorities as leader of the Labour Party. And as I say, we are an absolute world away from the stain on our reputation and from, frankly, the awful culture and environment that did pervade in the Labour Party many years ago, and we're now a world away from that.
Graham.
Well, I feel sorry for Lucy. I know she has been a stout defender of Jewish people, not least within the Labour Party all these years, and she has to come on here tonight and say what she's just said, that she's confident in the processes. We had the Rochdale candidate come out with the most egregious, appalling and awful racist rant on a conspiracy theory, and the decisive action was to say the leader, and he sent out people like Lucy to support that candidate. I mean, it was utterly terrible. I mean, imagine being one of those people. And then it was only under media pressure, days later, and we had to listen to him on the television saying, I've been decisive 5 times in a minute, which is a pretty good clue.
Labour also claiming new comments came forward.
Sorry?
Labour also claiming that new comments came to them.
Did it need more than that first statement? I mean, I say, you know, I mean, we go back to the lines we have to take. But I just feel sorry for Lucy. I feel sorry for Luciana. I feel sorry for Louise. I feel sorry for all the Jewish people who put their trust in the Labour Party. When they see behaviour like that, it will undermine their confidence. I hope it can be eradicated, but it clearly hasn't been. Labour has not changed despite what Keir has said, and he proved it just the other day. So I think they are back to square one again.
And what I'd say to the
country is this country doesn't want to be taken back to square one with Keir Starmer and Labour. That's why Labour is the number one enemy of its winning the next election. And the more people see of the reality, the less likely they are to vote for them.
I mean, honestly, I have to, thank you for feeling sorry for me, but I really don't need your pity. I'm here, of my own volition, saying what I want to say about this topic, and I don't need to sort of take a lecture from you about that.
Hang on a minute. Can you say how it took Keir Starmer so long?
Hang on a minute. Right. What I will say is that Louise Ellman, Luciana Berger, Jewish Labour Movement for Europe, many Jewish leaders who do have confidence in the Labour Party, they've made that clear this week because they can see the trajectory that we have taken over the last few years. And obviously there were some comments made, there was a fulsome apology given for that, there was reassurances, there was no further comments that were made, it was out of character for that person, then further comments came to light, and that is absolutely where the action was then immediately taken. And it is a big decision to withdraw support for a candidate when a by-election is already underway. This now means that the people of Rochdale, many of whom I know, because it's not that far from where I live, won't be able to cast their vote in the way that they want to, which is to vote Labour. So you can't take these decisions lightly.
Will you come clean on who else was at the
do you know
meeting?
what, Graham? I honestly won't take lectures from you because we've had many by-elections in these last few years as a result of your MPs going around misbehaving, going around taking money for asking questions in Parliament, going around exposing themselves, exposing themselves to their staff, going around creating mayhem. Chris Pincher by name, Pincher by nature, who your Prime Minister said a by-election calls for that, when your party have stood by those people at every stage, and we've had by-elections. I will not take any lectures from you.
Can I hang on. Can I also just point out that the Conservative Party has suspended a Conservative mayor and council in Salisbury over alleged anti-Semitic remarks on WhatsApp. So just for balance.
Who was at the meeting? Is that the interesting question?
It wasn't a Labour Party meeting, as you know.
There's lots of hands up, and I'd like to hear from the audience, if that's all right. Woman here in the red top.
As much as it is nice to hear you quarrelling about who's that and who's that, what I want to know is, as well as you thinking that the processes and how you're dealing with it are effective, why is it allowed to happen in the first place? Because at the end of the day, the comments are still made, the people are still hurt from the comments that are still made, and the trust that Keir was trying to gain in the party as his main mantra, but also in the Conservatives and in the government in general, because quite frankly, who knows what's going to come out of your mouths these days. Why is that allowed to happen in a place that should be held with the highest regard in the country?
OK, I will let you answer some of these, Lucy. I'm just going to get around the audience. Yes, the young man there, yes, in the dark sweater, I think.
And how can you say that Keir Starmer has taken a decisive action on the matter when, like has been said, he's waited for a media pressure? And are we really supposed to believe that he's going to carry on to take decisive action in other areas when at the minute all he seems to want to say is vote for us because we're not the Tories?
OK, and the woman further forward in the shawl here.
With all of these comments, you know, all of the politicians have done something and said something inappropriate. Is it not time
all of them?
Well, no, not all, but, you know, a lot of them. Is it not time we look at the ministerial code and apply it stringently?
All right. Drew, do you want to come in on this? I mean, obviously, and it's worth pointing out the SNP has had issues with councillors and others in terms of anti-Semitism.
Well, the wrangles with the Labour Party having with the anti-Semitism, of course, are a problem for them just now, and clearly it is a big issue. But the thing is, there's no room for hate of any sort. There's no room for anti-Semitism in politics, no room for Islamophobia. We should really be getting beyond that. It should be about what we can do for people. We've got folk in a cost of living crisis just now, and we're talking about issues of that are othering people, that are making people less than they should be. Brian's question was about the Labour Party, and are they their own biggest problem? I would say it goes beyond what we're talking about here. I think it goes to some of the U-turns that they've been making recently as well. The £28 billion a year pledge to invest in green energy, which has just been dumped. It's absolutely nonsense for the economy. It's something that should have been done. I know Jürgen in the past has mentioned that's the minimum required every year, and that's for our future. It's for tackling climate change, it's for building industry, and it's an investment. Those are the kinds of things that we should be talking about. But there's also other things like, you know, the rowing back on abolishing the House of Lords and everything like that. When you talk about trust, those are the kinds of issues that I think really do affect people. And that's why I think the Labour Party have got problems with this. And that's why, as they continue to go forward, they'll continue to have it. Unite the Union said that the Labour Party are outsourcing policy to the Conservatives. That's the issue.
Jürgen. Is Labour's biggest problem in the next election Labour itself?
Well, look, I do agree with the lady at the front here who was saying that we've had too many of our politicians just, quite frankly, trashing standards in public life, not adhering to the ministerial code, not adhering to the Nolan principles. And look, Graham, I hear what you're saying. I know you have high standards in public life, but it isn't very easy for you to lecture Lucy about standards in public life, because we've seen much from your party that has trashed those principles. So I, quite frankly, I thought it was quite refreshing when I saw Keir Starmer coming out and saying, I am going to make a decision here. You can argue about the speed in which it was made, but a decision ultimately was made that the MP that was standing in that area behaved in a totally inappropriate way, and I'm not going to support you. I mean, I think it's refreshing that we have that sort of leadership sticking up for good, responsible public order.
OK. Jill, I'll come to you in a minute. I'm just going to get round a little bit more of the audience. Woman at the back in the middle with the glasses.
Yeah, I'd like to put this to Lucy, actually. I can't believe you can sit there and say that we can trust the management and regulation of things going on within the Labour Party, when only recently Keir Starmer has U-turned again on green funding, green spending, and it's not the first time. There is a track record now of U-turns within the Labour Party.
OK, I will come back to you. The woman a little bit further forward in the blue sweater. Yes.
I agree with everything that you've said about the Labour Party, but I think this is across the board, and this problem will not go away until we look at the definition of what is anti-Semitism. We can criticise Sudan and politics, we can criticise Indonesia, France, Germany, but you say a word against Israel and you're anti-Semitic. And it's
Do you mean a word against Israel or a word against the Israeli government?
The Israeli government and Israel, generally. Anti-Semitism is should be about a faith and something against Jewish people. I have been in countless marches surrounded by Jewish people shouting things which, if I said, I'd be accused of anti-Semitism, and Jewish people could say. It's a political thing, and we need to look at that definition of what anti-Semitism is, and I think at the moment it's wrong.
OK, all right. There'll be people who disagree with you, obviously, but I hear what you say. Is the person further forward? Yeah.
So, obviously, anti-Semitism is reprehensible, but the Tory party seems to encourage xenophobia, which should also be equally reprehensible, but it seems to be excused within the Tory party. OK. Listen,
let's come to you both. So, Lucy, there's a number of points being made, not only about these remarks that have been made and Keir Starmer's reaction to them, but about the point you were making at the back there about going back on pledges, for example, the 28 billion.
Well, look, I mean, the first thing I'd say is, absolutely. Do we need to clean up our politics in general? Yes, we do. Have we had a number of years now where our politics has been brought into disrepute by sort of scandal and misdemeanour and misbehaviour? Yes, we have. Not helped by the fact that we've had sort of total chaos in government with the changing prime ministers and the economy being crashed and all of that. So we do need to put more guardrails around standards in politics and cleaning those up. And we have a number of plans to do that. And I tell you now, Keir scares me because he's so ruthless about some of these things. So believe me, he will do that. But look, on the broader issue about U-turns or whatever, what you're seeing from the Labour Party is we have been clear all along what our values are, what our missions are, what our objectives are in terms of how we want to change this country for the better. We absolutely believe that we need to invest in our economy to get our economy back on track. I'm sure we'll come on to discuss the economy. We've got huge ambitions to become a clean energy superpower with huge billions of pounds worth of investment going in over coming years. But
much less than you'd originally.
But it was always subject to those fiscal rules. And what those fiscal rules mean, when the Conservatives have absolutely crashed the economy, we've got stagnant growth in the economy, we've got no headroom. We've got no headroom. We always have said it was subject to those fiscal rules.
You didn't. You announced it as
we
a
absolutely did.
We absolutely
did. We absolutely did. And those fiscal conditions have changed markedly. And what you have to do when you're in opposition, you have to adapt to the circumstances that you find yourself in, so that, because I just get back to this because I think it's really important, so that should we be fortunate enough to win the next election, which is, a difficult ask for us, but should we be fortunate enough to win it, what we have committed to in terms of that clean energy superpower, in terms of that green investment, we know for a fact we can deliver that. And that is going to help in terms of the reputation of politics as a whole.
Jill, you've been very patient. Forgive me for making you wait so long. So the original question, is Labour's biggest challenge to winning the next election the Labour Party itself?
Yeah, OK. I think I just want to bring us back for a moment to the shocking nature of what the candidate for Rochdale said. And he was only known by Keir Starmer to have said it because somebody in the room was obviously so disgusted they recorded it. But nobody within the room beyond him seems to have taken any action. After what took place on October the 7th, when people were burnt alive, raped in front of their families, babies beheaded, kidnapped, the most horrific terrorist attack you can imagine. If any of you have seen the film, you will have been sleepless afterwards. This was a hideous thing to happen. Absolutely hideous. And everybody surely would join in condemning it. The Labour candidate for Rochdale claimed that was arranged, in effect, that Israel gave the green light to that to happen, so they would have an excuse to invade Gaza. Can you imagine, supposing people talked in those terms about the Holocaust? Oh, well, the Jews brought it on themselves. They wanted it to happen. They wanted to be murdered in their thousands. It's so deeply offensive. It goes beyond anything you might say about other reprehensible things that politicians have done, and we should be horrified. And Keir Starmer's immediate reaction should have been, this is intolerable. This man must immediately be deselected and out of the way. Regardless of what happens in Rochdale afterwards, this cannot happen in the Labour Party. He didn't say that. He waited until there was another leak and decided after much dithering, I'm sorry, Lucy, but you cannot defend and say the Labour Party has been cleaned up but when something like that is allowed to happen. And there is an instant...
All right. Listen, I'm gonna move on and take another related question. Lots of you wanted to ask about Labour, and lots of you wanted to ask this next question. So let's hear it from Sophie Al-Khaled. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Sophie.
Yes. With nearly 30,000 dead in Gaza since October 7th, half of which are children, what else do the people there have to endure for the UK government to call for an immediate ceasefire?
Graham.
Well, what we need is an immediate pause, and we need to get aid in, and we need to get the hostages out. And we need to ensure that Hamas, a terrorist organisation that carried out the atrocity that Jill just described, that they are no longer running Gaza. We have to ensure that.
Can I just be clear? Because when you talk about we need to call for an immediate pause, and Sophie's talking about why there should be an immediate ceasefire, how do you see the difference?
Well, because Hamas is a terrorist organisation.
No, I'm not asking that. But what's the difference in your mind, in the government's mind, between calls for an immediate pause and an immediate ceasefire?
Well, what we need is an intervention so that we do not have terrorists controlling the whole area who are dedicated to the death of every single Israeli citizen and the destruction of that country. How could anyone tolerate the atrocity and then the continuation of a group who will only regroup in order to dedicate themselves to their fundamental aim, which is the death of every single one of your citizens? That's the situation. That's why we must, you're absolutely right, Sophie, to highlight, the level of suffering and the need to minimise that, to ensure, as we do, engaging with the Israelis to influence them as much as we can, to ensure that they're proportionate in what they do. But what we need to do is we need to get those hostages freed. We need to get aid in. We need to ensure that there is, if military action has to continue by the Israelis, that it is done in as proportionate a manner as possible with a maximum preparation to minimise civilian impacts. But it is impossible to say that they should sit there and allow an organisation dedicated to the death of every one of their citizens to continue to be in charge. It's intolerable and it cannot be allowed, but we must also pressure them to behave in the most responsible manner possible.
Drew.
These are nearly 30,000 innocent children, women and men caught up in this action at the moment. There needs to be an immediate ceasefire. Did anybody see the footage today of a hospital being attacked and a patient receiving treatment dying in that hospital during the attack? This is a horrendous situation. Lack of food, lack of water, lack of electricity, lack of fuel. People are suffering. They're not only suffering death and privation, but they're suffering from the absolute terror that this is imposing on them at the moment. The only way to get aid in, to get things sorted out, is to have an immediate ceasefire. Not a pause. What does a pause mean?
But you know
not a pause, a ceasefire. No, let me finish. Let me finish. What we need is an immediate ceasefire. People have a right to be treated in hospital. They have a right to be able to live. They have a right to get food and water, and those things are being ignored at the moment. We need a ceasefire, and the SNP will be bringing forward a vote on Wednesday in the House of Commons calling for an immediate ceasefire. And I want to see the Labour Party support that. I want to see the Tory Party support that. I think everybody should be supporting that.
Do you think Hamas are concerned about their own citizens? Do you think Hamas should be in hospitals, building a terror network under hospitals?
Hamas are not the ones who are dying in their droves at the moment.
Hamas are enabling their citizens to die.
Innocent children, women and men are dying just now.
So what
They're
do you
getting
do?
injured.
So what do you do about Hamas?
Well, you have a ceasefire. You allow proper aid to get in. You allow a sustained period for people.
Hamas regroup and rearm. Hamas are using the aid.
You can't punish. You can't collectively punish nearly 30,000 people and more. We're talking about millions of people here that are under pressure. You can't collectively punish the people of Gaza for the actions of a group. That doesn't make sense. And it's not international law. This is a massive breach of international law. This should not be happening. it is a ceasefire that is needed so that people can get some normality back. Well, they won't get normality back into their life, but so they can get some respite.
So Jill,
some respite.
What's your response to Sophie's question there? Is that there should be...
Israeli children that were killed on October 7th. Why isn't your heart breaking for the Palestinian children that are dying?
My heart breaks for everyone who died.
Why isn't Israeli life more valuable than a Palestinian life? Why? Have you seen the videos of the babies?
Let her answer. You've made your point, Sophie. I hear you. Let her answer.
Relative values. I think we have to be horrified by what happened on October the 7th because it was wantonly and in cold blood that those horrible things took place. That wasn't in war. That was a deliberate act of the most horrible terror. I won't go over it again.
It was horrific, but
Hamas built their terror network under the hospitals. They know that they can use their citizens as, in effect, as people as bargaining counters. They have absorbed aid for many years from Israel and spent it on terror, not power, not food for their people. Israel cannot tolerate Hamas remaining in charge if it's prepared to do things like it did on October the 7th. There's no way about it. Israel have taken all the possible steps they can to get people to move away, but Hamas prefer to have their own citizens in line of fire because they think that's the way to win. I'm afraid they're the war criminals. There should be no doubt about who's in the wrong here.
OK. Let's hear some more. There's lots of... I know you probably want to speak against it, but there's lots of people with their hands up. I'm going to go around the audience. Yes, you've got your hand up there. Yes.
Talking about a ceasefire is too short-term. Why is no one actually talking about peace? What is a vote on Wednesday going to do in the UK to stop Netanyahu ruining any hope of peace in the Middle East? I'm the chair of the Lancaster and Lakes Jewish community. You cannot just call for a ceasefire and expect things to stop in Westminster. What good will that do? We need to free the hostages. Fighting needs to stop. Lives need to stop being lost and stop dilly-dallying over fake democracy here and actually have the government in power do something to act for peace.
OK. Yes.
I guess we have talked a lot and we know there are many horrendous acts happening over there. And for time being, we agree that Hamas is a terrorist organization. But as per international humanitarian law, there is an act of proportionality. The actions taken by Israel, that should be proportional. We need to see, like, we cannot literally sleep at night once we see the kids killed over there. The point of time at this moment is that all the major powers, UK, United States, they should take some actions that should have a sustainable peace in the Palestine. It's for Israel as well. Instead of supporting those, we should go for a sustainable peace in that region so that the people of that region, they can live a peaceful life and they have all those amenities. I don't know, like, the people who are just saying, like, they are defending the acts done by Israel. I don't know how they are able to sleep at nights. Like, you see the horrific scenes, people just lying on the roads, the small kids, 6 months, year-old kids. How can we let that happen?
Woman here in the front.
Hi. So before you said it was rather refreshing in terms of politicians, talking about it, but no one can give a clear answer. Like, are we going to have a ceasefire? Are we going to have a peaceful vote? There is never a clear answer from regardless of who you are, no matter if that is Conservatives, SNP, Labour. All we want to know is what action we're going to take in this international stage. We are one of the world leaders in international peace and security. What is next? Can anyone, and I mean anyone, give me a solid answer? I want that refreshing answer that was promised before.
So when you say none of the party committing to anything, are you saying that the SNP, for example, calling for an immediate ceasefire, that is a meaningless gesture? Is that what you mean?
No, I feel like a ceasefire in terms, it's not to say that it's a political statement to garner support. It's not to say that. But a ceasefire, as we've discussed, isn't a permanent option. It's not longevity. We need something in the long term that is going to resolve this. We can't just call a ceasefire. That is not how international law works. You cannot rely on the other side to go, OK, hands up, we're in the wrong. But we can't also just go, let's get Hamas out. It's a multitude of factors. You need to approach both as a ceasefire to set that example across the international stage that we have been involved directly, to then move to that direct involvement of removing hostages, to protecting these children's lives. I don't know how anyone can stand there and not agree in the idea of a ceasefire and direct action when you've got people who are younger than me who are just absolutely terrified of what they're going to lose. So, as a clear answer, yes, a ceasefire would be great, but it is just almost a political promise to garner support. So what is next? What is the longevity
I mean,
of it?
it is, as you point out, a massively complex problem, isn't it? So, Lucy, what is next? I mean, there can't be a single person in this room who does not want the fighting to end in some way, shape or form.
Absolutely.
How do we get to that point?
Absolutely. We all want the fighting to end. We all want to see an end to the needless loss of life that we've seen. We all want to see an end to the famine and the hunger and the tragedy that is now ensuing in Gaza as well. And you're absolutely right. It is an incredibly complex, long-standing, difficult sort of issue, which, you know, I wish we could sit here this evening and even get to the beginning of solving. And to do that, we do need, of course, the first step to that is a sustainable, permanent ceasefire.
So if you were in government now, Lucy, how would you go about doing
well,
that?
Yeah, and we're already...
Or do you think, in fact, you can't really have any influence at all?
Well, we can. We're an important nation. We're a permanent member of the UN Council. You know, Great Britain, the UK, we do have an important role to it. Obviously, we're not directly involved, but we have even been doing that as an opposition party. You know, our leaders have been out there. Hang on. I just said we need a sustainable ceasefire. If you just let me finish. I don't think...
An immediate ceasefire.
Do you know what? I don't think a single person benefits from you attacking me like that. We're all trying to stop the loss of innocent lives here in Palestine. And what I've just said is the fighting needs to stop. We need a sustainable, permanent, real ceasefire. Then we need a political process to get to that two-state solution that has long been what is needed in that region. And that means a recognised Palestine state that is free and secure. It means an Israel that is safe and secure with the right to exist and not be threatened by its neighbours all the time. And we need a new process to get to that. The processes that we've had, the quadrant and the various sort of mechanisms over the last few decades have failed. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in. So, you know, we want to see, I think, like anybody watching this to end and there to be that permanent, sustainable ceasefire. Okay. But really, we're only going to deal with this with a political process to a two-state solution.
Jürgen.
Yeah.
So Sophie's point is, how many more people have to die? I'm paraphrasing you, Sophie. How many more people have to die before the UK government calls for an immediate ceasefire? So should it be?
Well, look, we shouldn't want to wait another minute. The issue in this debate is I find that, you know, in this incredibly polarised world we're in, you're always forced to sort of almost have to take sides. And I think this debate is sort of forcing to take sides. And I genuinely struggle to take sides. Of course, the attack on October the 7th was horrific, evil, terrible. But we're all just looking at innocent people losing their lives on all sides now. Yeah. So I am with Lucy. You know, this debate here doesn't really move us forward very much. What we have to do is encourage our politicians here, in the USA, in the European Union. I do think we need some local actors to help, whether that's a Jordan or a Qatar. And these people need to come together and work out what is the solution for a permanent peace and to absolutely stop these atrocities. So not one more life, which of course is naive and won't happen. But, you know, let's get those people together and really stop it. And I honestly cannot believe that with all the intelligence that we have in the USA, in the UK, in the European Union, that we can't find another way of rooting out the horrible, terrible Hamas, but at the same time protecting the innocent civilians in Gaza.
Okay. All right. Now, this is a subject I have no doubt we will return to, so I'm gonna park it for now and move on to another question that lots of you asked about. Before I do, I just want to let you know at home that next week we are in Maidenhead in Berkshire. After that, we're off to South London and to Croydon in particular. So if you'd like to come and be part of the audience, Maidenhead or Croydon, go to the Question Time website. These are the details, and follow the instructions there, and we would, of course, love to see you. Right, let's take another question. From Sanam Saleh. There you are.
With the UK now officially in recession, has the government failed yet another pledge that they made?
Right, so we got that news today, didn't we, Sanam, that the government is now officially in... the UK economy is now officially in recession. Second consecutive quarter of negative growth. And that was a pledge made by Rishi Sunak that he would grow the economy. Jill?
Yeah, well, yes, it's another thing that Rishi Sunak said he'd do. Rather hopeful, I think, when he made these pledges. He's not talked quite so much about them since they've all sort of disappeared into thin air and proved to be unachievable, and we've had some different lists presented. So you're right to be cynical about the importance of those pledges. The recession has been described as a technical recession. The government would prefer to call it that. What it really just means is that the economy is stagnating, which is bad for everyone's living standards. It's bad for our economy generally. It's the opposite of what we need, because we're a very high-spending government at the moment without the resources to provide for that spending. And the only way we can get the resources, other than taxing people, is to actually grow the economy. And the way to grow the economy, interestingly enough, although not everyone agrees, is partly to cut taxes, to give people more money to spend in their pockets rather than having to hand it over to the government.
Yeah.
So there are lots of things...
That went well, didn't it, when Liz Truss tried it? Yeah. We're all paying the price for that now. Yeah. My mortgage has gone up hundreds of pounds a month, as I'm sure everybody in this said last time she tried that ideology.
Liz Truss was unwise to suggest that at the same time she'd borrow a whole lot more money to subsidise energy bills. You can't do both. You cannot keep borrowing money and never paying it back.
So Jill, the government says, or Rishi Sunak says, and Jeremy Hunt has said previously that the economy has turned a corner. Has it?
Well, I don't think there's much sign of it at the moment. I think they've got to be optimistic, haven't they? Because they've got an election coming up. And if it doesn't look any better by then, they know they're toast. I think they're probably toast anyway, because there's such disillusionment in this country with what the Conservatives said they would do and what they've actually done, that there's not much hope left, I suspect, unless the Labour Party goes on in the way it's done this week. I think it could be none of the above, as far as many voters are concerned. But yes, the economy is not in good shape, and we need a thriving economy. We need more people in work. We need to stop importing workers and actually get the nearly 10 million people in this country of working age who are not working into work, into jobs, get people off the sick by treating them in hospitals when they need to be treated, and actually have a more vibrant and healthy and stronger and growing economy, rather than one that's constantly held back by burdens of debt and low productivity. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm afraid I don't have a lot more confidence in Rishi Sunak to achieve that than in the things that he's promised and failed to do so far.
Jürgen.
Well, the truth is that it's just not the news today that tells us we've got a technical recession. We have had a low growth or a no growth economy for the best part of the last 15 years. I represent business, and business investment in this country has been pretty much flat for the last 8 years. Brexit didn't help the confidence for business to invest in this country. We haven't invested enough in infrastructure, which helps grow the economy. Things like cancelling HS2 has knocked confidence for the business community even more. And all of that has led to an economy which is flat, not growing, but it's also a low-wage economy. And that's why a lot of people in this country are feeling the pinch, because living standards just haven't risen. Now, look, the good news is, I don't want to be doom and gloom everywhere here, because there is an answer. I mean, we are sat in a university here in Lancaster, and we have brilliant universities up and down the country. And what we need to do is to invest much, much more in the technologies that are coming out of these universities, the skills, and we need to invest more in the green economy. We need to create new industries. I call it creating an industrial strategy. And sadly, this government, who I've worked with, I've advised, I've helped create industrial strategies, but actually we've not really managed to get it together. And we've not managed to create this new industrial green revolution or the infrastructure revolution that we need to create. And that's what we need to do more. So the answer is not lower taxation. The answer is invest more in industry, invest more in infrastructure, and create more well-paid jobs.
And get
for
that
our
money
country.
from where you're going to borrow it. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, look, I mean, we're going to have to find some ways to invest. And in the green economy, there is lots of business, private sector people that are willing to invest in this country. What business needs is more confidence, needs more support from the government, needs a long-term industrial strategy. Do you know, we have had 11 growth strategies in this country in the last 14 years. 11. What sort of confidence does that give to business to invest?
Well, let's ask
And
Graham.
we need more of that confidence,
Okay.
and I tell you, we can find a way to invest. Absolutely.
What sort of confidence does that give to businesses then, Graham? I mean, particularly if we're talking... Jürgen's talking about investing in green energy, and you're Minister for Net Zero.
Yeah.
You've got no industrial strategy, and you've had 11...
Well, Jürgen is a long-standing critic, and a very good one. And I appreciate...
Do you think he's wrong?
And I appreciate his part. Yeah, of course he's wrong. He's absolutely wrong. Well, let's take the green... He highlighted the green issue. Which major economy, I'll say of the 20 largest economies in the entire world, which one has cut its emissions the most? Hands up. It was official stats a couple of years ago. It's the UK. The UK, we've cut our emissions more than any other major... Jürgen, I didn't interrupt you.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant what we've done. But we haven't created enough of the jobs here that create that green economy. That's the issue.
Jürgen, we would always like to create more. We have 400,000 jobs created. We've gone from... The inheritance of your new Labour friends was in 2010, was less than 7% of our electricity came from renewables. You know that. You work for Siemens. Less than 7%, just 14 years ago, of our electricity came from renewables. Now it's pushing up towards 50.
And what about Sanam's question centrally, which is, with the UK now officially in recession, has the government failed to meet yet another pledge?
Well,
I mean, Rishi Sunak said he was going to grow the economy.
Well, absolutely, and that is the aim. What we also knew...
But that's a broken promise, then,
Do you want me to answer that?
Well, the question is, from Sanam, has the government failed to meet yet another pledge? What's the answer to that?
The answer to that is that we made the top priority, as this audience knows, inflation. If you have, when a year ago inflation was 11% a year ago, we said we would halve that. That was the first of the pledges.
But just to be clear,
hang on,
hang on.
Down to 4%.
In fairness to Sana, you're sitting so politely and nicely there. So I'm just going to try and get your question answered, if I may. Has the government failed to meet yet another pledge on growing the economy? Has it or hasn't it?
We want... The economy went into technical recession, as you said, in the last 2 quarters of that year.
They've just changed the goalposts. They'll just change
I still don't know. So the answer is it has failed to meet this pledge.
It has not grown the economy in the last 2 quarters.
Okay.
So to that extent, it has failed the pledge. But what we were absolutely clear about is we needed to bring inflation down. And we knew that by tackling inflation for the long-term interests of this country, not the short-term, that it would have an impact on growth. And so it has.
So why make the pledge?
It's come down to 4%. Because it's all about building the conditions for the long-term growth of the economy. That's what we're about. We have a plan to do that. Inflation is down to 4%. We want to go further. But look at it. Look at employment. Employment is remarkably strong. We have an unemployment rate around half that of France. We have, if you talk about growth, and Jürgen's former employer, of course, was German-owned, which of Germany or the UK has grown its economy most since 2010? Germany or the UK? It's the UK. Which one has grown its economy most since 2016, since the Brexit decision? Germany or the UK? Do you know the answer to that, Jürgen? It's the UK.
Look, I can give you another set of years where Germany has grown more than here. The whole point is both economies have had pretty low growth. But let me tell you something. In terms of earning potential, in terms of average wages, in terms of productivity, in terms of the amount of people working in manufacturing and industry, it's way larger in Germany. And so it actually is in France and even countries like Spain. So it's those high-wage jobs that we need much more of.
There's lots of hands up. I want to hear from lots of you. So, woman here in the front, in the green top.
Yes, just in response to this growing the economy, one of the things that the UK exports a lot of are weapons to regimes like Saudi Arabia, selling them at the moment to Israel. So are we growing our economy on the lives and the blood of children elsewhere?
OK. Woman over here.
Hi. You talk about the economy, and we are obviously feeling it incredibly much right now. Exactly. But the future of the nation is really on our young people. I'm the president of the Students' Union here in Lancaster, and I have students coming in telling me they can't study because they haven't eaten in 3 days. And that is
They haven't
abhorrent.
eaten people are telling you they haven't eaten in 3 days.
Fiona, I have hundreds of stories. We have a food bank on campus. Tonight we have Supper Club, which is where we give out free meals. We have at least 100, 150, 180 students every Thursday who are desperate for potentially the only hot meal that they'll have that week. We have a food bank that we struggle to fund. We can only afford a certain amount of food portions on campus. And this is because students are caught in a crossfire. Universities don't have a funding model that works, which means that they are increasingly aggressively pursuing international students who don't necessarily have a level of English that's appropriate to be studying here, and they're led here under false pretences.
But in terms of sticking to the economy...
Sorry, in terms of...
No, absolutely.
And students are the future of the economy. If we can't eat, we can't study. If we can't afford our rent, we can't live here. Okay. We need a working maintenance loan model that doesn't increase in line with inflation. The government does not prioritise students, and it hasn't in the last decade.
Okay, thank you. Woman with the green scarf. Yes, you.
Well, I'm not surprised that Graham is mentioning the inflation, which is the only pledge that Rishi Sunak has actually managed to, after everything else out of his 5 pledges, all of the 4 other ones, he hasn't met. So the answer is yes, he has failed. And why not end this horror now and call a general election now?
Man here.
Well, I'm quite surprised that a straightforward question is hardly been answered.
Well, I think we did get an answer in that Graham eventually said, yes, they hadn't met that pledge.
Fantastic. So we can move on. So, I'm talking about growing the economy.
In those 2 quarters.
Talking about growing the economy, and I like what you said about growing the economy, but each time you talk about growing the economy, people don't seem to articulate where we get the money from. And one group of people that have suffered in the UK when the government tends to increase spending would be immigrants, especially students that are coming to this country, because they contribute a lot to the economy. And now we've seen with the new immigration rules that the Prime Minister has rolled in, it has increased the financial burden on students. Yeah. And if we compare the UK to countries like Finland, where students are allowed to work up to 30 hours per week, you could understand, and given the fact that the economy we're now in full recession, and given the effect of inflation, even before now, cost of living crisis is high, is it time for the UK to perhaps move to a more progressive means of looking at international students, perhaps allowing them to work for up to 30 hours per week?
I hear you. I'm going to bring the panel back to the original question as well, if I may. So Sam's question, Lucy, I'm coming to you. With the UK now officially... Yes, prepare yourself. Yeah. With the UK now officially in recession, has the government failed to meet yet another pledge?
Well, yeah, obviously the answer to that is clearly yes. Their pledge is in total tatters. And it's not just a technical recession. I mean, I'm sure most people in this audience this evening didn't need to hear those GDP figures today to know the reality of our economy in our country, which is that we've seen the biggest fall in living standards ever on record. The biggest fall in living standards ever on record. That is some remarkable achievement of this government. And what does that mean? It means we've all got less money in our pockets, that wages haven't kept up with the prices going up. We've now been hit with interest rates and rents going up, so housing costs are a fortune. What else does that mean? It means businesses, like Jürgen said, businesses don't have enough money to spend and invest, and we're seeing high street shops closing, restaurants closing, businesses scaling back and not being able to pay their employees sufficiently. It also means that the government, because we've got this stagnant economy with this massive fall in living standards, the government doesn't have enough money to spend to invest in things like the NHS and our schools, which are the future of the growth in our economy. If people are on waiting lists, we've got 7 million people on waiting lists. If they're waiting for a hip replacement operation or for treatment or to get their cancer treated, they can't work. So a sick society is a sick economy as well. And that's why we do need to turn this around. And Graham can pick the one country, Germany, that is not performing as well as the UK. But
France,
we are
Japan, Italy, just to pick three others. Just in case you want some more facts.
No, that's not true at all.
Don't.
Because what this government like to do, which is what they're trying to do to the answer to the question, is change the goalposts. But we are growing less fast than all of the Eurozone, than the US. Living standards, so it's only the UK.
From what point?
If you look at the pre-pandemic living standards that were enjoyed around the world before the pandemic, it's only of the G7 countries, it's only the UK that has not actually gone back to those living standards from pre-pandemic. The Eurozone is nearly 3% above those. America is over 6% above those pre-pandemic living standards. So when you look at the measures that really matter, which is what is our income and what is the income of our country, we are failing. And this government has failed to grow the economy.
Drew.
Yeah, I'll repeat that. The Tories have failed the economy and they should be gone. They've had plan after plan after plan, and it's been the same plan, more austerity. When we talk about the economy as politicians, what we're reflecting, or what we should be reflecting, but we often fail to do, is that people are facing a cost of living crisis. They're living through this every day with higher rents and mortgages. The higher mortgages, thanks to the mini-budget disaster from Liz Truss. We're seeing higher food prices, 26% higher food prices over the past 2 years, largely because of things like Brexit. And we have an absolutely incoherent financial plan here. The trouble is, it's actually matched by Labour. They're going to look to do exactly the same things.
Absolute
They're
nonsense,
an austerity agenda, wedded to Brexit as they are, failing to invest in green investment as is needed, even taking that minimum step that they need to over the green investment plan.
What's the SNP's record in Scotland in education, in health? What's your record in terms of managing money?
Well, actually, let's talk about... Let me answer that for you, Lucy. The attainment level in Scottish schools for primary schools is the highest that's ever been. For secondary pupils, it's gone up. That's the ACAS results. These things are trotted out to try and undermine it.
Let's talk about... You know that's not true. What about your
Let's go back to the question, Lucy.
What about the tax burden and people's standards
Lucy, you
of
just
living
accused Graham of trying to sidestep the question, and you're trying to do the same here.
No, I'm just
talking about the economy here.
You're just accusing me of saying that I'll have the same policies, which I won't.
Let me tell you about what the Scottish Government are doing in Scotland to help people. We're not only doing things like mitigating the bedroom tax, but we're also freezing the council tax, which is already lower in Scotland than it is across the rest of the UK. So we're taking actions where we have with limited powers to try to do things to help people. But what we'd really like to do is invest in the economy. We'd like to take that money and put it into the green economy, which is one of the few industries that
but hang on, Drew,
have, and it's in
there
Scotland.
Are things that the SNP can do. I mean, you have levers you can pull in.
We don't have control. We don't have the powers.
But you have control
energy.
over some taxation. You can choose what you prioritise to spend money on. For example, people can go to university. Hang on. You can choose some of your priorities.
We cannot make those macro decisions about the economy. The Scottish Government don't have substantial borrowing powers like any other government.
You're heavily subsidised by the government in Westminster.
Well, this is troped out all the time. And
money's
of course,
handed over from every taxpayer in England to the people of Scotland.
Let me pick that up at the moment. The 75% tax, the windfall tax that's going in to support the Tories' plans at the moment is coming from North Sea oil and gas. We're producing renewable electricity. All of that money. No, I've just said I want
bring
to
in more imports.
Hang on, I'm just going to say we've got 4 minutes left, and we are a million miles from the original question, which you did answer at the beginning. So I'm just going to call it halt now, because otherwise it's going to turn into some SNP political party broadcast, which I completely appreciate you want to do, but I just need to.
I'm not getting the chance at it.
No, I'll give you quite a long time, in fairness, Drew. I hope you'll agree. So you can have about 30 seconds each on this last question, but quite a few of you asked this, so I'm just going to try and squeeze it in. From Sally Ann Mayer. Sally Ann, whereabouts are you sitting? Oh, there you go. Right, let's hear from you.
When can we expect to have a rail system that we can rely on?
Oh, yes. Yeah, you see? You want to talk about this, but you haven't got long. OK, let's just go round. Jürgen.
Well, the truth is, it's going to take a long time. And actually, the reason why we haven't got a functioning rail system is because our politics hasn't thought long-term for many decades. So what we need is a reset, we need to think forward like the Victorians did, and think forward 30, 40, 50 years. Sounds impossible for some of my political friends here, but we are confident that as a business community we want to work with politicians to put such a system in place, get HS2 back up and running, and make sure we create a proper infrastructure for the UK.
Okay. You're getting about 30 seconds each, but come on, when are we going to get trains over the ground? There are more strikes announced, actually, recently in the last couple of days as well.
Pleased to see in my local area the Pacer trains. You remember those kind of rickety things? At least they're gone, and I'm up and down on the train
what's the answer?
every single week.
When can we expect to have a train service we can rely on?
We've seen significant investment in the railway. It's still not as reliable as we want it to be.
So what's the answer?
I'm pleased to say that it's continuing to work on strengthening the system overall, using technology.
So in 5 years' time, say you were to get into government again, would the people here be able to say, yes, I have seen a significant improvement in the train service?
We have seen significant improvements in the quality of rolling stock. We've seen
so
the quality of rolling stock has improved, and we need to keep working on improving the system overall to deliver for people.
Look, I think we all know in this audience, don't we, that we're talking particularly here about trains in the north, because they're particularly bad, and if we were in the south we probably wouldn't be having quite the same conversation. But the railway system is broken in this country.
OK, so if Labour gets into power, when can they expect a train service they can rely on?
Well, obviously, we can't do it immediately. We can't solve everything immediately. But we need to bring the rail system back into public control, because we have at the moment where you have, for example, which you'll all be familiar with, we have Avanti West Coast talking about the free cash they get from the government, because they take the government takes all the risk and they take all the profit for their shareholders.
So listen, I appreciate that you
we've got to completely restructure the railway.
OK, I appreciate that you can't spend money on everything necessarily, but say, for example, you get into power by the end of the first Labour government. Who knows if there'll even be one or a second one? At the end of a first Labour government, would the people here see an improvement in the train service? Is that what they should expect?
Well, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
OK. Well, you can judge that.
Change.
Come back to question time in 4 or 5 years' time. Yeah. Should Labour get into government? Jill, very quickly.
I think you get a better train service when ASLEF stop calling the unions out on strike. Train drivers are paid way above people working in medicine, nurses, lots of people in public services. Train drivers at 60,000 a year and upwards, and they're always striking. They're constantly going on strike with no regard for their passengers and protecting their interests, not yours.
Okay. True. Very quickly.
A large part of my journey down here tonight was on ScotRail, which is the franchise that the Scottish Government have taken back into public ownership. I think that's the way to go. I'd like to see Network Rail being devolved to Scotland as well, so we can make an even better job of it.
Right, OK. Right. Forgive me for not bringing you in on this, but I've just run out of time. But I can see you want to talk about it. Our hour is up. Thank you very much, incidentally, to Lewis Whitehead, who has provided the pictures here of Lancaster. Thank you very much for those. It's always very nice to see where we are. And remember that next week we are in Maidenhead, and the week after that we'll be in Croydon. But for now, from Question Time, thank you very much to the panel. Thank you to all of you for coming and putting your questions. And I have to say, putting them in a very well-mannered and respectful way. Thank you for that. And thank you at home for watching. From Question Time, bye-bye.